Alright, welcome to another DraftScience video presentation. I had to make sure I was recording because I already made this video and lost it all. I really hate when that happens. So, just see how it records fish. Yeah, see how bad this is. Pop the camera in and the subject will be Ken Wheeler. Yes. Oh, yeah, I wanted the text file too. Is that here? Yeah, there it is. Ken. There he is. All right. And this. And we'll get rid of this. All right. Enough of the fish. So, till next time with the fish. All right. So, I did send an email to Ken, requesting the, offering the $2,000. And it's just kind of a funny interaction, so I just thought I would start with that, and then we'll get to the Ken video on the double slit experiment that's just so bad. In terms of it's just so typical Ken Wheeler nonsense, where he has a title that has nothing to do with the video. I mean, he calls it dual slit experiment, like he's going to talk about the slit experiments and the what it produces as a result. And he doesn't want to talk, he doesn't talk about it at all. Fundamentals, details, and facts. No, nothing. There's absolutely nothing in the video, has anything to do with the actual subject. So anyway, so we'll get to that. So we'll start with this. Okay, so I wrote to Ken. I'm quite certain you're aware of this, but just for an official record, I am offering you $2,000 to play a 17-minute video titled "What is a Photon?" on your channel as part of a regular upload. Of course, you can add whatever commentary you like as augmentation to the video, but it must remain on your channel as a regular upload. These are the simple terms, blah blah blah. So he writes back, which was bizarre. The term photon is conceptual, so it's just like Bill Gates. I wrote him a couple of times, and it doesn't matter what you say in your email. He always responds the same way by just telling you everything's a rope, and then rope. He just writes a whole bunch of rope crap and doesn't pay any attention to what you're talking about at all. It's like he doesn't even read the emails. He just sends a rope theory as a response, and it's just Ken's doing the same thing. Like, I haven't heard his silly whatever nonsense that we're not supposed to label what a photon is. Now, we know photon is a certain amount of properties. We know it does something. So we can already call it something just because it does something. It doesn't matter whether it's an octopus or a squid, right? I mean, those distinctions are kind of silly. We know it has tentacles. We know this, we know that. We know these certain details. And of course, we're going to call it something. It'd be stupid not to call it something because it does something that all the other stuff doesn't do. Photons do something completely their own. Nothing else does what they do. So yes, we call it photon. It doesn't matter, getting into a description of what a photon is, that's a whole nother conversation. That you can argue is conceptual. But the existence of the photon is not conceptual. We're using a word to describe an effect. And the effect is real. So it's just silly jargon. I mean, these stupid word games. No such entity as a light particle photon exists. So again, more crapola. He's saying it because it's a wave, we can't call it a wave. Because it's a, it's just jargon, just semantics, just playing word games. So we know the thing exists. We know we have a word for it. So now let's have an argument about what the thing is. Let's not have an argument about whether it exists or not. We know it exists. So anyway, then he says, what does regular upload mean? Like, I thought it means not irregular. It means not a hyperboloid upload. It means, you don't put it on private, or you don't put it on unlisted or some other kind of shenanigans. It's a regular video on your channel. YouTube doesn't allow the same video to be re-uploaded over and over. Again, what that, how's that relevant? Oh yeah, that's right, it's not. So then I respond, it means a video that has to be posted as your as you post regular videos. So it's just posted as a regular video you upload. It can't be posted as unlisted or deleted. Okay, anyway, it has to be your regular indexed YouTube video. And of course, they say you may play the video as part of your video, or you can post the video as a standalone video. So I gave them the option. And then I said more directly, I'm effectively offering you $2,000 for the debate you are unwilling to participate in because you have no integrity. Yeah. Not only am I paying you an obscene amount of money for doing something you should be willing to do for free, which is defend your physics against real opponents, I'm also giving you the advantage of just allowing me 17 speaking minutes. So I'm giving you a debate and saying, Larry, you can take as much time as you want. You get the first word, you get the last word. I just get my little 17 minutes. All right? And I'm going to pay you $2,000. And you're still unwilling. Yeah. What does that say about you? Okay. Here's the real point. All right. So they post. Okay. Oh, I didn't know who you are until now. Yeah, well, whatever. So now he remembers me. And then he says, I like you. You're funny, actually. Real physics, so he says, so-called, has never defined the term field. So now he's, again, just preaching at me this crap I've obviously heard 7 million times out of his mouth. And what does it have to do with me? I'm not defending regular physics. You're the one. It's Ken Wheeler's view of the double slit is exactly the same as the conventional theory. And the only thing different is he wants it to be called ether instead of electromagnetic field. So if they just made if they took all the double slit videos and they just changed the word electromagnetic and just changed it to ether, he'd be delighted. He'd be perfectly satisfied then. All those videos are brilliant. So it's just this little silly game he's playing, this little silly word game. Oh, it's disgusting. And so he says, real physics, so-called, has never defined a term field, so that angle won't work here. Like, what the fuck does this mean? Right? So I responded, so you're declining the offer because real physics, so-called, has never defined the term field, so that angle won't work here. I mean, that's why he's declining. Something I'm doing defending regular conventional physics. Even though the whole purpose of my channel is to attack that physics. And, by attacking it, I'm also attacking the same physics of Ken Wheeler, because they both are silly wave physics. Anyway, so you think my physics videos are about defending conventional physics? Question mark. If you watch the video, you would see it clearly debunks their physics as much as it debunks yours. Well, anyway, just so for the record, I mean, I have... we have explicit acknowledgement, anyway, that Ken has heard that he can get $2,000, and we know Ken is desperate for money. I mean, we know it's kind of obvious that this guy is the guy who likes to spend money. $7,000, computer, just got a lease on a BMW, bought himself a little cottage in the woods, always has all this technology, buys every new camera that comes out. Clearly somebody who probably has some credit card debt. And he won't take the $2,000, but he'll slather his videos with ads, but he won't take the $2,000 to make fun of me. I mean, if that would be his perception, is that my arguments are ludicrous and therefore they could just be mocked. And so I'm paying him $2,000 to go ahead and mock it. Have fun. Knock yourself out. And he won't do it. You know how fast? I mean, I would take $2. Literally. Somebody could offer me $2 to make fun of them, and I'd take it. $2? Why not? What's inhibiting blubber? Flubber. Whatever. Anyway. So, it's just too silly. All right, so the funny thing is Ken did a double-slitted video 5 years ago, debunking the famous double-slit experiment, the basics of quantum mechanics and GR. Well, it really doesn't have anything to do with general relativity, frankly. I mean, that's an insane stretch. So, but the weird thing is okay, this has 18,000 views, and it's got 216 thumbs up and 302 thumbs down. Now, what is going on there? So this is before Ken had 100,000 subscribers. So and you're just saying, is this the kind of numbers games YouTube's play? I mean, what the hell is that? What is the rationale behind this? What is the reasoning? So here we have an experiment, right? That's sort of demonstrating something, and people should come up with explanations, theories. What's the duality theory that explains this? This 18,000 view video 5 years ago has more downvotes than upvotes, and yet the one he made in October, just a few months ago, has 9,000, almost 10,000 views, and has 1,000 thumbs up and only 36 thumbs down. An insanely different ratio with insanely different proportions and numbers. And you're just saying, what is the shenanigans here? Not that it's Ken's fault, but I mean, there's clearly some kind of shenanigans. Anyway, so this video is just so bad. So the original video, he puts a needle in front of a cheap laser and makes a pattern 10 feet away that he doesn't even zoom in on, that you can't even see, and says it's the same pattern as the double slit experiment, with a single needle. Obviously, it's not the same pattern because, see, that's how much he doesn't know. He doesn't know there's two different patterns, that all the interference patterns aren't the same, that they have features that are unique to the circumstance. So let's do that part first. Oh, I really hate having to do this video. I did all this. I did it all very well, and I have to do it again. And that's not working. There, it worked that time. All right, so we have two kinds of pattern. We have the single slit, and we have the double slit. And what it turns out mathematically is it really is about sources. So the math just counts this as a distance between the surfaces. And the distance between the surfaces ends up being the key to the whole thing mathematically. And so it doesn't matter whether this is an impediment or this is an opening. It's really just about the distance between those surfaces, and you'll get the same pattern for an impediment of the same size as an opening of the same size as the impediment. You'll get the same size fringes. This one won't be as bright. There'll be the only difference, right? So if it's an opening, this one's going to be really, really bright. And if it's an impediment, this one won't be so bright. But that's the only difference. All right? And that's the single slit pattern. So it has a double-sized central maxima and then equal-sized fringes going out. And the size of the fringes is completely dictated by the width of the slit. The thinner the slit, the smaller the impediment, the bigger these fringes are, more space they take up. And the wider it is, the smaller they get. So if you make it very large, they get little tiny, tiny, tiny things. You won't barely even be able to see them. The double slit pattern, on the other hand, has two patterns, as you can see, very different. See, made up of little pieces inside the pattern. So there's two patterns in the double slit experiment, and two waves don't explain it. If you use two waves, you won't get the right answer because that's a point source in the middle. That distance won't work. It will fail. And there's only two cases where it can work, and that is if you make the surfaces really close. That is, if I put two surfaces really close to each other and negate their existence, essentially, mean that mathematically, this line and this line don't have enough difference, okay, to matter, to change the pattern. So they would be essentially the same source. So if the two headlights are really, really close to each other, from a distance you can't see them, okay, because they look like one. And the same thing is true in this case. So, but if you have normal size openings to the slits and normal size of impediment, two-wave math completely fails. So the only way it can work is you essentially have to create a circumstance where the slit width matches this width, and then this distance is essentially the only distance in the experiment. But anyway, so it's just a rare case. 99.9% of the time, two-wave math won't work. You have to use 4 point sources. That's the math that works. The math that works tells you the right answer, where exactly these will be and what size they'll be, is the math that uses 4 point sources. And the key is the two smallest distance, the smallest distance, which usually is the impediment distance, the smallest distance between two surfaces. That'll tell you this pattern. Okay, so the small distance tells you the big pattern. And the widest distance between two surfaces, the longest, the most frequency wavelengths that will fit, tells you this size, tells you exactly how big these little bars would be. And so essentially the pattern is just made up of contributions from 4 sources. These would all be going in the same direction, obviously. I've made this much bigger than the pattern, but so the 4 sources would all be going in the same direction. And that's where you get a bright spot, is where they're in phase, where there's a full wavelength of difference between each one of them. Then you'll get a bright. So that's the math that works. It predicts these empty spots perfectly. It predicts all the sizes, all the places, everything. You just, how many wavelengths there are in here tells you exactly how many wavelength differences there are essentially on this curve. And that tells you that explains everything. So you can get every detail correct. You can know why there's a big double maxima here. You can explain every detail of these by understanding them as 4-point sources. Not wave sources, vector sources. 4 vector sources. And that explains the pattern. So Ken has no awareness of the actual experiments and the actual patterns. That's why he keeps saying, a single needle made the double slit pattern. It obviously didn't make the double slit pattern. It made the single slit pattern. And he's so ignorant, he doesn't even know there's a difference between the 2 patterns. So we'll play some of this and then I'll go to the end here. I'll jump through it because he says the same thing. It's just in the end he says it even worse than he said it the previous times in the video.
For example, or 1. Which, of course, a cake doesn't have 1 ingredient. What if you're baking a cake and the main ingredient was something you had no idea? It's like, the main ingredient's in this box.
All right, so he's just insulting conventional physics because they don't explain what a virtual photon is, because they don't explain what the field is, right? The electromagnetic field. They don't explain what it is. And they can't account for the energy in it, and that's the biggest problem they have. There's energy in magnets. There's energy in the field they create, and they don't have any way to account for its existence. So that's why they have to call it a virtual photon, because they can't account for its existence as being sourced by actual energy that went in. And same with charge and all of the fields. They can't account for their existence, so that's why they have to say they're made of virtual photons that are communicating the message. They also can't account for opposite momentum. The idea that they shoot a bullet at something, a messenger. The messenger travels at the speed of light, and then the thing moves towards them. They can't explain how you have opposite momentum, where an electron is attracting a proton, that kind of thing. All right, next.
You can't look at it. All you can do is just pour it into the pot and cook it. Like, okay. And you're forced to make conclusions about what the nature of a cake was after you cooked it and you put some icing on it.
Well, so anyway, there's just nothing that's fundamental to the details or facts regarding the double slit. So I'm just saying the title is just so bad. He always does this. He promises and doesn't deliver anything close.
That would be incredibly stupid, right? So what's the this is really weird. You make a bunch of conclusions based upon something that you didn't know the main subject of the entity. And of course we're talking about the double slit.
All right. So, and of course he doesn't explain it either. So he just says ether perturbation, retroactive coaxial cable, blah, blah, blah. But he won't draw you any pictures. He won't explain any of this. So it's just as much a mystery. Ken Wheeler's ether is just as much of a mystery substance as conventional physics' magnetic and electric fields. They're both completely undrawn. They're non-real things. Ken will never draw it and show how something perturbates through it because he can't explain something quite elemental. So I should have included this part. The big problem with Ken's jargon is the part where, at least conventional physics has the honesty to bring up the problem that creates their need to say duality, right? They have to play this duality game. And why are they playing the duality game? They wouldn't want to. They don't want to by desire, right? Their desire seems to be, let's call it a wave and keep it a wave. They want it to be a wave and only a wave. But the problem is when they put the photographic paper here and they try shooting some photons, at a low energy, with as few as possible, they end up with little spots. They go and take their photographic paper into the lab, and if they have low light, this is what they get. You know, they get little spots. They don't get something that filled the whole paper. They don't get a wave that hit here, and then a wave of light that hit this way, and then a wave of light here. They don't get anything like that. They get one tiny little spot. So somehow something waved, okay, out, and somehow the wave turned into one little spot, one little spot, one little spot. That's a truth. Ken Wheeler knows that. He knows enough about photography to know that that's how the sensor on the camera works, is that it's picking up one little pixel, one little pixel, one little pixel at a time is being energized. That there is no wave hitting the whole surface. There's no continuous blob of energy that goes everywhere. There's no wave, okay? There's a straight line that can be drawn from the source to the destination. And he has this claim that somehow this thing stretches out and then somehow magically goes back to a point again. How does it do any of that? Like, again, you can't draw a picture of it. He can't explain these. He can't explain how this piece of photographic paper or this image sensor is only detecting tiny discrete bits of energy. No evidence of a wave at all. And so in his facts and details, he won't give us the details. He won't explain to us, how does a photon do that if it's a wave? How does it wave that way?
Slit experiment. Everybody wants me to comment on the double slit experiment. YouTube is full of a lot of...
Yeah, I mean, you can't have it both ways, right? He's going to say it's caused by interference. It's an interference pattern. Coaxial cables don't interfere with each other. If it's running in a straight line, if it's a little discrete wave that moves in a little discrete path, you know, how do you explain the facts? How can it interfere with itself if it's discrete paths? There's no potential for interference.
Highly polished, very pretty videos that are absolute rubbish.
So he says they're absolute rubbish, except they're based on exactly the same theory that he argues, which is wave interference.
They're undeniably nonsensical trash.
That I agree. They're clearly they're clearly nonsensical trash. Now the fact is that it's unrefutable that they are. It's not undeniable. Clearly people deny it, but it's not rationally refutable that it's garbage. Young's analysis 200 years ago was wrong the day he drew it. He did a really crude version of the double slit, and so he didn't have to have any mathematical perfection. So he just got away with drawing these two waves and saying two waves make the pattern. They can't make it. They don't work mathematically. Mathematically, it doesn't work. And it hasn't worked for 200 years. And conventional physics hasn't admitted that. And that's a huge gap in their credibility.
I thought I'd actually look at...
An undeniable gap in credibility.
The main one before making this video is like, you know, I refuse to watch this. This guy's got like 7.5 million subscribers. All he does is regurgitate.
So Veritasium, so he won't even say his name for some reason. I guess because he's afraid that maybe he'll get counter-argued, that maybe Veritasium will start picking on him. You know, he's such a coward. Oh, such a coward.
Regurgitate unintelligent trash that you'll find on the internet, and that of course is, you know, nothing true is popular, nothing popular is true. That of course is consensus.
So more nonsense about all that kind of crap. Of course, things that are popular are true. 2 + 2 = 4. Very popular, very true. Darwin's theory of evolution, frankly, among people with any kind of intelligence at all, very, very popular, very, very true.
Consensus, of course, never gives you the truth of anything.
It helps, frankly. It's a good way to test the logic value of an argument, is to go out and throw it at everybody and say, can you get it? Can you understand it? Einstein would basically, lots of smart people would have argued that, yeah, if you can't explain it to a 10-year-old, you probably don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
I made a video several years ago, which never really got any views.
Oh, that would be you, Ken. That's right. No 10-year-old is going to understand what you're, you know, they're going to be honest and say, what the fuck are you talking about?
Take a
Fat man.
Laser pointer, and then I point it at a shaft of a needle, not the eye of a needle, right, but just the shaft of a needle. And if the laser light hits the shaft of the needle, it'll actually make the exact same interference pattern on the wall as you'll see from the dual slit experiment.
There you go. So, a preposterously stupid thing to say, right? Because factually it doesn't. I mean, the patterns are very different. I mean, you can see the difference. It's like calling a platypus a duck or something. Yeah, they got something in common, but they're really different. Come on, let's not pretend the platypus can fly and all that kind of crap, or it quacks. Yeah, no, it doesn't do any of that. Bullshit, Ken. They're not the same pattern at all.
But the nature of the dual slit experiment is an experiment of the effect of light as it hits a dual slit. And you'll see countless other YouTube videos saying, well, only if one photon was emitted. And yet we can't figure out this great dual slit experiment paradox, because we have a dual slit here, but only one photon. Like it's this, like it's this light particle traveling in space from point...
Right, okay. So he still hasn't explained, though, that he has to explain that result. So whether you think you can make one photon or not, like I said, I don't think you can either, and I'll explain that. But he's not explaining it at all. He's not accounting for the fact that it has every appearance of leaving as a discrete little lump and then arriving as a discrete little lump. That's the fact. So you have to explain the facts, Ken. You can't just keep pretending it's the same as sound. No, sound lands everywhere. Sound, if I have 25 people, they'll all hear the same sound. The same speaker vibration will go to all of them. Light doesn't do that, Ken. It only goes to one of them. You have to explain the facts, right? You put the word facts in your video, and yet you're not talking facts. So, yeah, I guess I'll throw in here my little bit on the creation of a photon, and the problem with the idea of a single photon has, practical limitations as a possibility. So I would argue that electrons moving is what causes photons, and what it's really doing is just compressing space, right? So when an electron moves, it compresses the space in front of it, and it expands the space behind it. And by expanding and compressing, I'm just talking about if a pattern is coming towards the electron, and the electron moves into it, well, when the pattern reflects, it's going to reflect into a tinier amount of space. So something in this much space is going to be confined into this much space. And the trick is when electrons do that, this is one component of the photon. Then another electron does it over here at timing. Electricity travels, and at another timed interval, another electron does the same thing over here and creates a compression. Now this is the 500 nanometers, okay, of the photon between these compressions. But what that means is that when you made one photon, you actually made 3 photons, because all 3 of these little bits, okay, will all be photons at 500 nanometers. So making one photon is, you have to make 3. You can't, or you have to make 6, or you have to make 10. Just depends on how much energy the average electron is pushing into. We'll say how much light is in the room will decide how much light I compress, that reflects off of this, and how much light doesn't will all be decided by how much light there is in the room. So photons can't really be created as single objects unless you get rid of all the energy in the room and then move the electron, which is really hard to do. So single photon is a misnomer, no doubt. And that has a lot to do with how you interpret the experiment, because obviously if you think there's only one photon, because you put in just enough energy for one photon, well, you don't get to dictate how much energy there is for the electron to move into. So you can't control that. So there is no single photon, technically. There's a group of photons, all with exactly the same phase and pretty close to the same period.
A to point B. And it sees a dual slit, and then it passes through both at the same time. Well, this is the nature of light, because light is a wave-particle duality, they'll tell you.
No, that's not what they'll say. They'll say, look, you got 2 choices, right? If you make it a wave and say it's spread out, well, that doesn't make any sense, because we know how discrete it is. We know it can get through little tiny holes. We know it can do lots of things. So I can't say it spread out and went through both things because it was spread out. So what other explanation is there going to be for how can it interfere with itself otherwise?
Sorry. Oh, God.
So he's laughing, but he has no counter argument. He has no explanation for the duality of the experimental results. He's not going to tell you why the experiment produces the certain results it produces. He's not going to explain why it produces those results. And he's mocking people that are at least attempting to do that. Now, I would argue that, yes, their attempt is silly, okay? But your attempt, I think, will be just as silly. Because your theory is fundamentally just as wrong as theirs.
Sorry about that. I love those convoluted answers that are no different than saying.
So he's saying he doesn't have convoluted answers. It's a coaxial cable retrofying on the hyperboloid retrofunction in counter space. Huh? Yeah, he's such a hypocrite. All right, so let's jump ahead.
These things don't exist. They're not the inputs or outputs of any experiment ever done.
So this is another line he's just all the time saying, when of course they are. That's the whole reason it's believed in, is because it is seen all the time. I really don't want to pause this video. What are my options? Think. What I will do is just pretend it didn't happen.
Hi, this is Gary. I can't get to the phone right now, but leave your name,
just
number,
pretend
message
it didn't
if you'd like. I'll
happen.
get back to you as soon as I can.
Yeah, there's nothing happening here. Nothing. See, nothing? Nobody. Very cool. I guess it's what the trolls like to do.
Thank you for your call.
It's part of their harassment policy. But anyway, moving on.
They have nothing to do with reality at all. And the reason for this is you can't quantify a field. Now, you can if you use the four Maxwellian field equations, but you're not actually defining a field.
So isn't that just ironic? You can't do it, but you can do it. He says this shit all the time. And yeah, they're vectors. Okay, Maxwell's equations are vectors, full of straight lines.
In itself, of itself, by itself. Because the four Maxwellian field equations only define a field with a vector over a period of time with a given result. Joules, watts, amps, volts, so on and so forth.
Right. Nice straight lines, and it works very well. You just figure out the distance, draw a straight line between two different forces, then you just allow the piece of matter to do the addition. The matter is affected by forces. The forces don't interact with forces. The light doesn't hit light. It all happens on the surface. That's where you draw your vectors to, is the surface. And all you're doing is breaking and remaking photons. So here, I'll give you the that part of this, just so you get the theoretical part. I guess we can erase the bottom part now. We don't need it. The simple solution to the slit dilemma is just that the surfaces have electrons on them, and just a simple fact, lots of electrons. All right, the surfaces are a blended medium. And what you're doing is sending a pattern in. So a photon is just a pattern, you could say, of like four things. And there are four things that have a polarization, so they're a little bit scattered. They're a little bit displaced in distance. Right? And what happens is the ones that go near the surface, the first thing you know what happens is the ones that go straight through, go straight through. That's why the center bright is so bright in the single slit. It's intensely bright. 90%, 95% of the light goes right here. All right? And so the only place the fringes are created are photons that go near these surfaces. Because if they go near the surface, what happens is half the photon can crash right into the wall and it doesn't get anywhere. So there's only two left, and the two end up going, one goes this way, one of these little bits goes this way, one of them goes this way. And this keeps happening. When the photons are going through, a whole bunch of them are just being broken into little pieces, and little pieces go everywhere on this surface. Every single location gets hit by little pieces. Every single location. By all the photons that go through this little obstacle course of the surface. The surface breaks the photon. So the photon was a pattern, right? The distance between little clumps of energy. And what you're basically doing is just breaking the clumps into pieces. And all you're saying is where is there a location where if I draw these two lines, it's a full wavelength of difference, okay, in the length of the lines. And that just means you put them back in phase. So here you took these pieces, you just scatter them, and then you just say, where did I put them back in phase? And where are they out of phase, in the sense that they're like this instead? Okay, this isn't a red photon, right? This is. So that's all you're doing. You're just saying, where is the pattern reconstructed? Where you reconstruct the pattern, you have a photon. Where you don't reconstruct the pattern, that is, they're out of phase, you don't have a photon. You just have little bits of energy. Now, if you do the radar experiment where you have two sources, no slits, and you just have two sources, then clearly all you're doing, okay, is in some places the radar signal is reconstructed in the right timing, and in the other places it's not. But it's still hitting the other places, and you can find that out by just putting a directional antenna on, and you just tilt it this way, and you can still hear the signal, and you tilt it that way, and you hear the signal from over there. So it's still getting here. The energy's still getting there. Nothing got interfered with. Nothing got destroyed in this space at all. Zero destruction in here. This space does absolutely nothing to the photons. Nothing happens here. It all happens right here on the surface. And then it happens here on your collector. And obviously your collector should be an arc. All right. Those are the real facts, Ken. Those are the facts. Facts, facts, facts. The real facts.
They think everything is a particle, including light.
No, see, they don't. So this is just such a preposterous straw man, right? I mean, we already know they have a guy called de Broglie who called everything a wave, turned electrons into wave functions. You know, so it's just a lie to call conventional physics something to do with particles. They don't believe in particles. You won't hear any of their professors talk about the light particle. No, they'll talk about light waves. So again, just keep, it's just such a lie, Ken. You know, there's such a straw man.
They can never explain light with a particle. They try to explain it with a wave, but waves don't exist because waves are not things. Waves are what things do.
So this is the silly part, right? He believes in wave interference and yet is claiming waves don't exist, which is kind of silly, right? So he's saying there's perturbations in ether. Well, what do the perturbations look like? Do they look just like waves? I mean, what's your argument, Ken? See, he can't even be clear. He clearly is arguing that the medium just moves. Okay, so he's arguing wave theory. He's not arguing that any substance goes from here to here. He's just saying the substance moves, just like a wave. So he clearly believes in waves. So why is he pretending there's no such thing as a wave? It's just too silly.
There's no such thing as space. Nikola Tesla said this, and that's where he railed against Einstein, because space has no properties.
So, again, too silly, right? Nothing doesn't have any properties. You know, I mean, it's just too silly, right? To say that there's no such thing as space, and then say there's that the space has to be a something because it doesn't have properties. No, nothing would be absolutely nothing. Nothing wouldn't be something disguised as nothing.
A space, time, and shadow. And
See, he thinks it has attributes. Space doesn't have properties, it has attributes. Attributes are more complicated than properties. You have to have a property before you can have an attribute. Ugh.
a wave or fundamental emptiness. These are all conceptual reifications which don't exist. There is no such thing as a wave.
So more nonsense, right? How do you make even sense out of that? Obviously, space doesn't exist. It's just a word for nothing. So yeah, it doesn't. It's just a joke.
Waves don't exist at all. This is one of the fundamental errors that they make about light. Anyway, before the dual slit experiment.
So again, he says they don't exist at all, and then he'll basically just talk about wave interference. How can you have wave interference if they don't exist at all, Ken? That doesn't make any sense. He doesn't call it perturbation interference. He calls it wave interference. I mean, his hypocrisy, his duplicity is just egregious.
Whether it be circular or linear polarization makes no difference. Light's not an emission. Nothing emits light. Sure it does.
So again, he's saying there's no emission because it travels through a medium. So he's saying like when a bell rings, okay, the bell isn't, emitting anything. It's just making a bunch of atoms vibrate, which is true. It moves some atoms. Okay, but in a sense, they are moving in a direction. So again, it's sort of deceptive to say nothing really is moving in the direction of the wave, because it is. All right, it's just that you don't see it. But it's like an ocean wave. An ocean wave pops up, but guess what? Gravity pushes it back down. And then it has to go forward because it can't go into more pressure, so it has to go into less pressure. So it does keep making the move forward and then going up and then going down and then going forward and then going up and then going down and then going forward. So it does all three of those. It goes up, it goes down, it goes forward.
No, it doesn't. Before getting on to the dual slit experiment, let's state another fact. By the way, Nikola Tesla referred to light. Let me give you the exact quote of Nikola Tesla. Here we go.
So again, Tesla, who's famous for what? Burning holes in the ground.
And then it says, this is Tesla. Tesla. Light cannot be anything else but a longitudinal disturbance in the ether. He actually calls it a sound wave in the ether. Here we go. As a matter of fact, radio transmitters emit nothing else. By the way, radio transmitters emitting EMR. EMR and light, whether that be radio or light, or both EMR, are nothing else but sound waves in the ether. The reason why he uses sound...
Okay, so again, it clearly has to be something more because it's clearly collected as a bunch of discrete bits of energy. So it's completely unlike sound. So maybe Tesla was ignorant of this. I don't think he was. I mean, he did play with X-rays and different things. He should have known that, well, they're really discrete, and that unlike sound where everybody would hear the sound, in every location. Like if you could make a piece of sound paper, okay, like a photographic paper, and so the sound paper would be you put a bunch of ears on a piece of paper, right? Different people's ears. They all hear the same sound. One sound photon goes to all of them. They all hear it. But light doesn't do that. So that's the duality problem, Ken. And again, you've never addressed the actual experiment. The actual experiment demonstrates that it's not like sound. It's completely different than sound.
Sound is the perfect analogy. It's the same phenomena that you actually see with sound. When people talk about constructive and
So again, it's not the same phenomenon. Sounds, the interference pattern in water and sound is on and off, on and off, on and off, and no sound, and then on, off, on, off, on, off, on. So there's pattern, no pattern, there's stuff, no stuff, stuff going on and off, and then stuff not doing either. So again, it's very deceptive to say it's the same pattern when the pattern isn't even made out of the same kind of mechanism. The on and off, in the other mechanical things, it's on, off, on, off. There's a switch going on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off, and then a switch that's just stuck at nothing. And then on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. And light isn't doing that. Light is either on or off. So there's overt, clear differences.
Constructive interference, the resultant effect of the dual slit experiment. If you actually, these experiments have been done, you can find them on YouTube. You set up barriers and a high sonic or low sonic burst of sound is created. You actually get the exact same constructive and destructive interference from sound.
So again, it's not. And that one's clearly demonstratable in the sense that, again, if all you have to do is sit at the target, so he's just described the radar experiment or the radio wave experiment. And all you have to do is put a directional antenna and all the cancellation goes away. Say if you got sound cancellation at this point, right? You have two sounds that are projecting at the exact opposite in their wave, right? Two tones. And then you'll hear no tone. All I have to do is give you a little cone. And all you have to do is turn the cone and you'll hear the sound from over there. Then you turn the cone this way and you'll hear the sound from over there. Now, if they had interfered with each other as waves, how is that possible? How would it be possible to recover something that already got destroyed, that already canceled? If the sound is canceled, how can I possibly recover it? And it's a fact, okay? It's a fact. You can recover it. So it didn't happen before it got to the target. The target still, the place where you don't hear any sound because the two sounds canceled out, the sound is still hitting there. You just can't hear it because they've canceled themselves out on your eardrum. They didn't cancel out in space. They canceled out on your eardrum. And then all you have to do is get rid of one that's making the noise to get the sound back. Okay, now that's, I might have pushed that limit. Yeah, I might have gone too far. It's true of radar, so I shouldn't have said sound. So just stick to the radar or the radio experiment. Sorry, didn't want to confuse the two. Radar and radio will allow you to recover the signal. Sound won't.
And of course, sound is a perturbation of the air, nitrogen and oxygen. Nothing emits sound, and nothing emits light. Sure you do. We got a speed of sound. Well, speed of sound is the hysteresis of the air.
So that's just that bullshit word he threw in, right? I mean, hysteresis has to do with how fields energize and how long it takes them to de-energize. So there's always a lag in, how something goes from on to off. It doesn't. The electricity goes up and then goes back down. It's always lagging behind. The current lags behind the voltage, kind of thing. It has nothing to do with radio waves, light waves, or sound waves.
Yeah, that's the maximum rate of propagation. Maximum, I say, because sound doesn't have a set speed. It changes upon the density of the air, whether it's really hot air, really cold air. Light is the exact same way. The speed of light is constant. No, it's not. And that's not only
yeah, it is. The speed of light when it's not pushing matter. So in empty space, between matter bits, the speed of light is always the same, the speed of light. And it's just when it has to push an electron that it's slowed down, period. So if you're pushing electrons, you're slowed down. And that's it. But that's the simple explanation. The light never slows down. It's just that it can't go as fast when it's pushing an electron.
Position of every branch of science in the world. Because light changes speeds, or what is not speed, actually, but rate of induction when it passes through glass or water. It changes. By the way, if light were an emission, you can never explain light speeding back up after it left glass without...
So again, more nonsense. And so it's like me explaining that if I have a bicycle and I'm pedaling and then Ken Wheeler jumps on, I'm not going to go as fast. Okay, it's going to be hard pedaling for a while. And then all of a sudden, if Ken Wheeler jumps off, I go back to my normal 30 miles an hour kind of thing. So no big surprise. No mystery why light, when it's not going through the medium, when it's not plowing through atoms that have a bunch of electrons in it that it has to bang into, when it's not doing that anymore, it seems to be going faster. Well, yeah, that's right, because it's not hitting a bunch of little bricks that it has to push along.
Breaking the law of conservation of energy. You can never ever explain light as a wave or particle or wave-particle duality.
Yes, you can, blah, 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 blah. So these statements people make, and they're cowards, right? So he makes a statement, and he's such a coward, he won't defend the statement, because clearly I have a theory. I'm sure there's other people that can explain how particles can explain it, but particles can. Photon is a pattern of bullets. And all you have to do is you can break the pattern and then remake the pattern. No big deal. It's a simple pattern.
Or an emission, without breaking the law of conservation of energy. Anyway, the dual slit experiment starts out with the extremely false supposition of over a dozen different things as to the nature of light. In other words, an experiment is performed, a result is observed, and conclusions are made from that resultant...
And none of this you have paid any attention to. Again, he doesn't know the difference between the double slit pattern and the single slit pattern. He doesn't even know what part of the ball game you have to explain. And here he is ridiculing other people's analysis. He hasn't discovered clue one, and he's solving the crime. He didn't even look at the crime scene. He didn't walk through it, didn't look at the evidence, nothing. And he's just making up a story that Mr. Mustard did it in his, pumpkin shop.
Observation, which are all over YouTube and everywhere else. But you can't conduct an experiment until you understand the nature of what is being experimented on. Light!
Right, and you don't understand it. You can't explain it, you can't draw it, you can't be consistent with any of the experimental evidence. You completely deny the existence of all the evidence.
And they have absolutely no idea. You can't base any conclusions on a cake from a mystery main ingredient that you have no idea what. Just throw that.
So again, he has your mystery ether ingredient that you never explain. You never draw me a picture of it, ever. All right, so I'll jump up here and we'll play the last bit.
Conventionally call unintelligent human beings call speed light. That's not speed, it's a rate of induction. Light doesn't travel from point A to point B. Sure it does.
So more crap, just keep saying it over and over and over. Never pay any attention to any counter argument pointing out that yes, it does travel the same speed, and all you're doing is putting more crap in its way. Obviously, you put some crap in the way of something, it can't move as fast when there's crap in the way. Take away the crap, it moves fast.
Yeah, it's good. And this is something I really haven't emphasized enough in all the videos that I've done on cosmic mechanics, is that every human being on Earth, well, essentially everyone, nearly 100%, if something has a speed, then that means A, that there is something palpable, in other words, an object of some kind. And if it has a speed, it means it's traveling from point A to point B. Because when you say speed is...
Yes, and he doesn't believe in any of that, which is quite bizarre. But yes, All momentum is derived from momentum. Something has to move to cause other things to move. You can only transfer the movement from one thing to another 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 thing to another. That's all you can do. The movement already has to be in the universe. It's already there, and all you're doing is transferring it between matter and force. Forces hit matter, cause the matter to move. The movement of the matter means the forces will reflect in a different pattern, and that different pattern will affect another piece of matter in a different way. But that's all that's happening.
The speed of light. Every human being on Earth will think that it is something, number one, and number two, it's traveling from here to here. Because that's like being in your car. It's your car, and it's traveling from point A to point B, and it has a speed.
Right, so we have all this evidence in the real world that that's how it really works. The car doesn't just move. You have to put gas in it. You have to do this. You have to turn the engine. The cylinders have to do movement. All this stuff has to happen or it doesn't work. And yet they'll believe in this silly universe made out of all this hyperborealoid swirly crap.
But it's not a speed. It's a rate of induction. It's a rate of induction of the perturbation of the medium itself. That medium being the air, that medium being the ether.
So the air, the ether, he's calling them the same thing. Obviously the ether, okay, has something about it. The ether in space. The ether that light travels through has to have something about it different than the matter ether. Okay, they're in a very different condition. So you at least have to explain how the condition changes.
Never explain even half the phenomena observed of light by this wave-particle duality nonsense, which is completely illogical. It breaks the back of Occam's razor.
So, again, Occam's razor is the simple answer, and he believes that a curved line is the simple answer. He thinks that's some kind of naked chick, in the Garden of Eden or something, is a line that's curved linear. He thinks a straight line, that's not simple. That's not the simplest thing you can have is a straight line. He thinks the simplest thing you can have is some curved linear line. Yeah. So this is where language just falls all apart. So this is supposed to be a language expert, and he doesn't know what words mean at all.
Never, ever explain it. You can't explain it easily and simply with the ether, but you can never explain it without waves and wave-particle duality. Light is not an emission.
So again, let's just understand the wave-particle duality part. Clearly, no physicist ever, no conventional physicist, no pop physicist, none of them ever used the particle theory to describe light. I mean, that's clear. Overwhelmingly clear. They never draw particles going into the two slits, okay? So let's just understand, they never use the particle type theory to explain. They always use waves.
It does not have speed. It doesn't travel from point A to point B. It's not a particle. It's not a wave. And it's not a wave-particle duality. That's only 6 of them. There's still a half dozen more.
So again, he believes in wave interference, yet he doesn't believe in waves. So I just can't make any sense out of anything he says.
Which are more subtle than that. Mother Nature is not a nerdy chick with glasses, with a calculator in each hip pocket. I mean, she's a hairy armpit chick with muddy feet and a hemp skirt. Everything she does works off of pressure mediation. Capacitance, resistance.
Well, pressure mediation would have been great. Okay, the number of things hitting you. That's a great way to think about it. That's pressure, by the way. That's the atomic theory of pressure. Things hitting you. The frequency of the event of being hit. That's pressure. Okay. And it's equal to temperature. They're correlated. The two things are directly correlated.
Permeability, permittivity, centrifugal divergence, centripetal convergence, force and motion, inertia and acceleration.
Right, so he says that's simple. That's caveman, rock on stick. That's when it's not. Oh, I knew that was coming. I'm allergic to stripes.
The most fundamental force of the universe is which necessitatively so
stripes.
Must extrapolate out 3D geometry, extrapolate out the interior torus geometry. That is the geometry of force.
Oh, so again, you can't draw a picture of the torus photon. He might have, I don't know, he might have tried to do some donut photon. I don't know, I'm sure it would be an insanely complicated, bizarre thing. Instead of what it really is, which is just a little clump of momentum moving from point A to point B.
And there is only inertia and acceleration and force and divergence. There is only the toroid and the hyperboloid, both of which are the negative image of one another. The negative image of a torus is a hyperboloid. The negative image of a hyperboloid is a torus. Hyperboloid is an hourglass shape, by the way. The double slit experiment is easy.
So it's all about donuts and hourglasses. Oh, it's sure it is. No, I'm sure it isn't. I'm sure that's not the simplest diagram that works
to understand, but you cannot even begin to have a debate about it unless you first have a discussion about what the heck light is and what the heck light is not.
You don't have discussions. You just tell us, and then you don't in any way defend your argument against any counter arguments. You are a coward. Yeah, a plump coward.
It is simplex constructive and destructive interference. The ether.
So he just said it, right? Constructive and destructive interference. Well, how is it doing that if it's not in the form of a wave?
Slit or shaft, two spatially original perturbations are created. On two rarefactions, you'll have mutual intensity. With two
rarefactions, you'll have mutual intensity. So he's saying when it's up and the other one's down. Oh, no, that's up and down is like waves, so we can't say that. Once one's compressed and one's expanded and the two hit each other, that they'll become a nothing. Well, that's fine, but how did they do that in all the locations? How did they land in one place?
Two nullifications or compression, you'll have mutual null points. Constructive and destructive interference. The exact same phenomena we see with sound. Same phenomena.
Exactly the same phenomenon argued by conventional physics to be the cause of the pattern. And exactly what I'm counter-argued kind of I think very successfully in terms of pointing out that the two source experiments, that is radio and radar, can easily be explained by jamming. The mathematics is exactly the same to describe jamming. That's clearly all that's taking place. And with the photons and light, it's clear that the energy is hitting the spots that are dark. It's just not hitting in the form of a photon anymore. The frequency is broken, and therefore it can't be a red photon if the frequency isn't red. Sorry, can't happen. It can't. The matter can't interpret it as a photon because it doesn't have a consistent frequency. It's not hitting at the right interval to add energy. So I've done this before, but it's like a pendulum swinging, the electrons in the atoms. And when you hit one atom and cause a vibration, it moves through the other atoms at a speed, the speed of light. And you have to hit again behind it to give it more energy. You have to push the pendulum when it's moving away from you. If you push it when it's moving towards you, you can't add energy. So to kick the electron, you have to add the energy in the same direction. When the electron's moving in the same direction you're adding the energy, or you can't add the energy.
You see, if you actually make two disturbances in the water, you'll actually have, let's say, well, the waves are...
So let's just understand, two disturbances in the water will not work, okay? If you try to use two-wave mechanics to answer the double slit experiment, you will not get a right answer. It won't happen. It doesn't work. The point sources are too few and they're in the wrong place. The math doesn't work. Two-wave math for the double slit experiment overtly fails. That's what you call a fact. That's a detail. That's fundamental to understanding the experiment.
Canceling each other out. In this case, we know what the waves are. The waves of water. Well, the waves of light. Of course, waves of what? And the waves of the ether.
So he just said it. The waves in the ether. There's no such thing as a wave, but there's waves in the ether. Okay? So if I say wave in the electromagnetic field, that's silly. If I say wave in the ether, it's not. So this is just semantics. So I'm just saying if all the other videos just change their rhetoric from electromagnetic field to ether, he'd be happy. Even though that would be kind of stupid because we sort of know that, yeah, there is two different kinds of radiation. They're not exactly the same.
Light is just a coaxial circuit ether perturbation modality.
So it's just an ether perturbation coaxial cable modality. So that's the simple answer. No, it's a pattern at a frequency.
repeat that since it's so important. Light is nothing other than a coaxial circuit ether perturbation modality.
Yes, fine, great. So he just declared the truth. You know, we all have to believe in this, whatever, this holy ghost that he's invented. The perturbated modality thingy, Bobby. Forget it. It's just, this is too ludicrous. And the human race can't just say, oh, come on, you got to do better than that, fatty. I mean, chubby.
That's not complex. It might sound complex superficially so, but it's very, very simple.
Okay, it might sound complex, but it's not complicated, right? But you can't draw it. And it certainly won't be anything like a straight line. And it won't be anything like rational.
I hope you like this video.
No, what's to like? I mean, you're just such a dishonest, cowardly turd to pretend you explained anything. So again, there was nothing in this video that had anything to do with a fundamental, a detail, or a fact. There just weren't any. The video was void of all of that. It had a little bit of straw man in it, but the rest of it was just crap. Just word garbage.
You do leave a comment. You don't leave a comment. Let me know.
No, if I leave a comment, you'll block me. Well, you already have me blocked, so I can't leave a comment. And again, my only comments were ever, how about a debate, Ken? That was the extent of my comments, and I got blocked.
You know, a lot of people say at the end of it, tell me what you think. I'm not one of those people that wants
Yeah, I don't want to know what you think. I just want you to pay me money. You know, just give me money. That's all I'm doing this for, you know.
I'm not interested in knowing something different other than the facts.
Yeah, and you don't know any. You called them facts, but they're clearly not facts. You clearly don't know what the double slit experiment is even about. You don't know that the pattern is different than the single slit. You really don't know anything about the facts.
When someone says, tell me what you think, it's like saying, I'm not sure myself, but tell me if you think I'm right. I don't suffer such inadequacies of understanding.
Whatever that even means, right? So he won't respond to any challenges to his lies, his deception, his distortions, his complete misrepresentations. I mean, no. He won't account for any of that.
Therefore, I don't ever ask those questions like that. Yeah. Anyway, have a good one, and goodbye.
My windshield just got...
Anyway, so just too bad. Yeah, too horrible, too awful. And I think I've covered everything I need to cover, though. Let me see. Yeah, there's commercials everywhere. I can't even go back to the other video and say, hey, there's no commercial there. But I should show the part
behind. Try Microban 24. It kills 99.9% of bacteria and viruses initially and keeps killing bacteria for 24 hours, even after multiple touches. Try Microban.
So does gasoline. There.
Okay, I want to show you.
That's how brilliant two-slit experiment he did, right? I mean, a single needle experiment. I mean, that's, it really is that bad. It really doesn't get any better than that, really. I mean, it's just a terrible, awful. Yeah, that was really the best you get. That's it. Oh yeah.
This is radio dielectric I'm playing.
Yeah, it's dielectric and blah blah blah. So just terrible quality video in all respects. And this again, he thinks he's debunked it by doing an experiment that basically just creates the single slit pattern. And the single slit pattern again is the two surface pattern. The double slit is the four surface pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 surfaces. It's just about surfaces. That's what the math overtly tells you, the math that works. 4 surfaces, 4. And 2 surfaces. And then 2 surfaces. Yeah, the needle is the 2-surface experiment. Just too simple. I mean, the answers are so simple, and they've turned it all into this mysterious pile of crap. It has nothing to do with reality. It's just terribly tragic that everybody just goes for this crap. They either get their religion from the Catholic Borg, or they get it from the Jehovah's Borg. And that's all this guy is. He's just a Jehovah Witness out there in the wilderness telling people, some silly story about how, don't you want to be a potato farmer forever? Yeah, that would be so cool, right? To go to heaven forever and just plant potatoes forever? Yeah, Isn't that what you want to do? And somehow these idiots eat this shit. You say, yeah, I'm signing up. I mean, you know, I did read comments in the other video, but it's just so tedious. I should read them on this video, I guess. Keep teaching, Ken. You are doing God's works. It's just so bad. Thank you. You are loved. That's enough right there, right? It's just, oh, you know. The state of the human intellect is just so dismal. Idiocracy is just marching. Goose-stepping all decency into the ground. Ugh, horrible. So anyway, okay, enough of a video. So I'll surrender, and I probably missed a couple of points that were in the first video, but it's probably enough to get it, you know. Probably I did enough of, yeah, I did enough. So till the next time and such, and so forth and whatnot.